Hi, welcome everybody. This is Diana Gray from UiPath. And today we have Andres and Mason who can introduce themselves to provide the exercise for today's class.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andres. I'm an RPA architect at Bank United.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Mason Turvey. I am the RPA tech lead at Privia Health.
And so we wanted to get the class started today just by asking if there's any questions about the previous material we've covered. I think specifically that would be control flow and variables and arguments in UiPath Studio. I know it's a pretty heavy topic.
No questions yet. They really liked the examples that were given the last 2 weeks. So they requested any more similar type like that would be good because that's what got them really connected with a couple of things like bringing in some of the stuff that they normally do.
Yeah,
Okay.
Andres and Mason, we used for control flow, we used baking cookies for RE framework and going to prom for control flow.
Okay, no, I remember I was sitting in on that one. The RE framework was making cookies as transactions, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right, let's see how we can make Excel into a relatable experience today. That's going to be interesting. Uh, okay, so I guess I will share the slides. 1 second. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so to start at the beginning, Excel is basically the heart of most businesses, I'd say, or at least definitely was up until recently. And given that UiPath is all about automating business processes, its ability to work with Excel files is kind of critical. What do you call it? Are you guys, I'm sure you guys have worked with Excel a lot in school to some extent, but all of the stuff that you can do in Excel, it goes really deep. You can learn how to model all sorts of things. I've heard it said that programming is just Excel without the boxes, basically. You can do almost anything in an Excel sheet, and UiPath lets you do anything that you might want to do in an Excel sheet in an automated manner, just to sort of kick that off. I don't know, Mason, can you help me out in
Yeah,
a way
yeah,
to make that relatable?
yeah. So, I mean, with UiPath and Excel, like pretty much anything that you can do in Excel, we're gonna try to be able to automate with UiPath. There's some overlap, within Excel functionality, like we can, read and write to different cells and areas and work with sheets within the workbook or whatnot. But there's some things that you can't do, like formatting and building some of the more intensive Excel features like um, pivot tables and building tables and things like that aren't available within UiPath. But basically, if we think about Excel as just a storage of like rows and columns for data, UiPath is able to go in and read Excel sheets and get that data out and pull that into a data table variable type, which we talked about in variables and arguments. We talked a little bit about data tables. So reading and writing to and from Excel are going to be using that kind of data table variable that we've talked about in the past.
And there's sort of different ways to communicate with these types of files. So there's the proprietary Microsoft Excel file. It's called it's this one, XLSX. So an XLXX file is something that you can really only open in Microsoft Excel, whereas XLX and XLS is more of a open source type file where you could really manage it in a lot of other softwares that also use sort of table management, and same for CSV. Well, CSV is actually just a text file which represents a data table by via commas and new lines.
Is
So there's
it,
different.
Andres, is this slide accurate? I think you can work with XLSX in workbook activities.
I
You know
This is
what?
the material that was
We'll
on the
test that.
Academy,
We'll
but
test that when we go
yeah,
through.
we could test it. I think you're right. I think I have managed to do that in the past, but maybe the functionality is sort of limited. But this
Mhm.
is what was on the docs. Um, yeah, no, I know you can even open an XLXX on Google Sheets, for example, but I'm pretty sure they were doing some conversion on their side. Because XLXX is supposed to be like the lockdown
Yeah.
Microsoft format. But all this to say, there's different ways of interacting with Excel sheets in UiPath. And when you go into the activities menu and try to find activities that let you interact with workbooks, there's going to be the workbook activities and the Excel integration activities and the CSV activities, which are all going to have slightly different functionalities to them. But before I go on, I want to know, like, what is the experience level of working with Excel of the audience of the students? Have you guys opened an Excel before? Have you guys done anything cool in an Excel before? Just to know where we are.
Yeah, Dr. Newfield, do you know, could you respond to see if you guys have worked with Excel at all in the class?
We have worked with Excel in the class. In fact, in several other classes, some of them are basic, some of them are intermediary. But what we have done is that we've got a couple students who are knowledgeable with Excel, who are at least trying to help them develop and understand how to correlate the variables and the other metrics that need to be done, so we can make the arrays and things like that that are corresponding to the headings and all the cells and blah blah blah. So we've got a mixture.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
and
cool.
Andres, if you want to kick it over to me, I can give a quick demo for the two different activity packages, where to find those.
Yeah, absolutely. Share your
Go
screen.
ahead and share my screen. All right, so Andres talked about two different ways of interacting with Excel. One of those is the workbook activities, and then the other one is the app integration. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a process here and just call it Excel demo. And then it's going to start us off in main. You know what? This screen is in 4K. I'm going to share the other screen. Same thing we had last time. I don't want this to be unreadable for everyone. There we go. Make it a little bit more friendly. All right, so you can go up to activities and you can type in Excel, and you'll see this little green icon that has the Excel icon. So those are your app integration activities. So these open Excel. They actually open the Excel application and interact that way. And you can find your activities under here. There's scopes, kind of like you use application, use browser. We can use an Excel file. We can start an Excel process. And then when we get into the cell activities, we can interact with individual cells. We can do autofills, get colors. We can do things with charts here, insert and update charts. We can actually work with pivot tables now. So I misspoke earlier. We can work with pivot tables. That's a new feature. That's exciting. And then these range activities are the bread and butter of the Excel activities. So we can append range, auto-fit ranges, clear sheets, copy paste, do a whole lot of different things. And you'll see most of the activities are under here in the range. And
Yeah,
then
no,
we,
in the modern ones, there's all sorts of cool stuff like for each Excel sheet, for each range, you can do all sorts of things, and you can actually now click through them. And when you hook it up to an Excel sheet, instead of having to just tell it what it should expect, it'll actually read the Excel sheet and tell you what's already there. So if there's like 10 sheet names, you can pick the sheet name out of a drop down.
Yep.
And these activities, they integrate in a really cool way now.
Yeah. And then the other integration with Excel is here in this workbook. So what's different about this one is it doesn't actually open Excel. It's going to be using an API layer with the Excel file itself to read and write from that Excel file. So we can do like deleting sheets, and you'll see it's like limited functionality. There's not nearly as many activities in here, but we can save, read and write, and do everything that we do. Not everything, but some of the things that we need to do with Excel on the workbook activities. All right, I'll kick it back over to you, Andres.
Yep. And here, I'll share my screen for 1 second too. Share. And then there was also the CSV activities here, which has even more limited functionality. Just to cap that off, you can basically do 3 things with CSVs. You can read to them, write to them, and add to them. Okay, now let me share the slides again. Okay, so the criteria for using each of them is also very different, and it's important because not everyone, Excel is a paid software one way or another, right? Like I have it because I pay my Microsoft Office subscription, which is like $10 a month or something like that. But to have Excel installed on your machine, it costs money. It's not free. So using the workbook activities lets you do all of this sort of stuff without having to have Excel installed. But if you want to do all of the sort of more feature-rich stuff that Mason was showing on his screen, you do need to have Excel installed. What Mason was showing about the Excel application scope and how that works with a specific file by actually opening up the Excel application, there's actually some settings back there that you can make it so that it opens in the background. So you'll still need to have Excel installed, but you won't see it show up on your screen as it's running if you choose to run it in the background, or you could have it show up in the foreground and then you can, watch the phantasm go ahead and do the stuff on Excel that you would normally be doing. Let me see, is there anything else on this slide? I'll mention that all of this functionality is in the UiPath Excel Activities package. I'm pretty sure that comes default whenever you make a new project on UiPath Studio. Like if you just make a blank project, that'll be included. But yeah, all of these activities come from that package at the project level. And any questions about this so far? Then I'll move on. So you'll have heard Mason and I just talk a little bit about some of the new things that we're seeing on there. There's 2 experiences for automating Excel, and you'll see this more, I guess, when we move on to UI automation. Though you'll only see the modern experiences here, and I think you'll also only see the modern experiences there as well. They've sort of simplified the methods of working with Excel, whereas before you kind of had to do a lot of legwork and tell the program what to expect to find. Now it's sort of built in. So you point at an Excel sheet and the UiPath will read what's on it. And then when you're doing your programming, elements of the Excel sheet will be pulled through and you can just point it. Hey, and this sheet in the Excel, I'm telling you, make sure you go over each row after, this header or whatever. So it'll actually get some context from the Excel sheet and it'll allow you to use that in the programming experience. It's a little bit more user friendly. Now, as far as how you want to drive what experience you use, that's found in the project settings pane. And I'll actually share Studio to show you guys where to find that so it's a little bit more visual. So here in Studio, you'll go to your project settings, you go to your projects, and then here's project settings. And then you can go to Excel Modern. Can you guys see the screen, this setting screen I'm sharing? Or do you guys just see Studio?
Yeah, I can see it.
Cool. So in here, in Excel Design Experience, you can see Use Modern, Use Classic, or Use Global setting. So here, this only applies to Excel if you click these two. But then if you use Global setting, it'll actually come from the general settings of your project, whether you want the modern design experience generally. So if you have this set to yes and you have global, then it'll be modern Excel. If you have this no and global, then it'll be classic. But we want to use modern, so just hit yes here and then either modern on Excel or use global on Excel. Okay, and that's where that is. And like I just described earlier, classic will be a little bit different. It's going to be a little less user-friendly, and modern will be a little bit more user-friendly. Okay. Oh, and then I guess that's really all I had for the theoretical material. These are exercises that you'll do once you actually get to reading the material on Academy. But that's basically it. What do you call it? I guess the other important stuff would be that you guys learned about the data table variable type in the previous classes and how that relates to Excel sheets, given that data tables are objects that represent basically what you see when you open up an Excel sheet, which is a table with, you know, different rows and different column headers and all of that. Any other specific questions that we could try to answer? Or Mason, anything else you think we should be mentioning?
Before we get into like a demo of it.
Um, would you be willing to do a little demo, Mason?
Yeah, I have something put together.
Nice.
Yeah, so I can go ahead and share.
Cool. Go ahead.
So I'm just going to take us through just a little usage of these. So I've already got this this little example workflow that we have here. So what I've done here is I'm just going out to this crypto data. This is my example site. This is the site that I use for everything because it's a very good modern website. I'll show you guys. So this is a cryptocurrency just price tracker that's always out here. And so this is a good one to try to automate because it'll throw a lot of like funky gotchas at you, but it's fully automatable. So I always use this site for examples. But basically what we're going to be doing just here is reading out data from this table. So we have our first row here that's got just this eToro in it, but then we're going to be reading after that to try to get the prices from this, and we're going to read that into a data table, and then we're going to paste that into an Excel file. So this is using UI automation at the start, so this is out of the scope of this, but we're just extracting that data table, right? Going to try to filter out that first row, so we're using a filter data table activity there, and then write that range. So this is using the Excel workbook activities. So you'll notice that I don't have a scope around this. So we're going to write this to this cryptodata.xlsx file. And one of the cool things about this is that file doesn't even have to exist. So we put the path of the file right here, give it the sheet, we give it the data table that we want to write to. You'll see over here in the properties, I've also included add headers. So that'll give our headers as well. So this file doesn't have to exist for this to work. I can actually delete this file, right? And then when I write this range, it'll write it to that file and create that file if it doesn't exist. Right? And you can also specify a starting cell here. You can give a file resource, which is pretty cool. I don't work with that too much, but if you are using, if you're comfortable with C#, then there is a data type. I'm trying to hover over it and get that. This data type here, iResource, oh, this is the UiPath resource. So if you have like a file that's stored up in a cloud server, that is what you would be passing with this activity to write to that. And then this file local path, this is the same as this one here. So given it cryptodata.xlsx, and then we're going to write to that file. So I'm going to just run this. It's going to open that website. And then we're going to have that file over here. Let's see. There we go. And we can open that Excel file and inspect it, make sure it looks good. And you'll see, boom, it actually filtered out that first row. So we got that. If I open up the site again, oh, it closed it on me. Give me a second, get back to the site. You guys can see the site, right? From the screen share? Sweet. No, looks like that
Yeah.
row's gone now.
Are you talking about the cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. We got the data from that. This is our Excel sheet with that data. You can see we have 10 rows here. We have the exchanges, we have some links on here, some logos, some more links, and then we have prices here. So with this, we're able to like push data into an Excel file and kind of use this as an input. We can pass this into other processes. Now we can loop through these using the modern activities, and I can actually show a couple of demos of that as well. So let's go ahead and create a new sequence, looping through rows in Excel. So that was using the workbook. And then there's a whole bunch of different workbook activities that you can employ here. So you can write range, write cell, read cell, things like that. That doesn't actually open the Excel workbook. When we get into the app integration, we're going to treat this much like we do with our with our web automation, right? We have to use the application and then have activities underneath of that. We're going to do the same thing with our app integration activities in Excel, except there's kind of two layers of usings here, right? So we have an Excel process scope that defines that we're using Excel, and then we use an Excel file within that. What's really cool about this is we can give it a template file, and we can use the file selector to actually get this. So these activities are a little bit more modern, right? This file's already in use. Oh, I gotta close it. I'm gonna open that. All right. And then let's say I want to, for each Excel row, let's just, let's go in there and let's print out one of the rows or one of the columns for each row. So we're just going to print out the price column. Or actually, let's print out two. Let's give it two. Let's say exchange and then price, so that we get the name and then what the price is. All right, so we're just gonna use this in range activity. So what's cool about the Excel activities is you can use the plus here. You can indicate your sheet like this, right? And so it auto-fills it in there. That's really nifty. And then if you have, I think you might have to have a template for this. Let's see. Oh, you can actually indicate in Excel. So you can show what range you want it to extract. So maybe I just want it to do this one, right? Instead of getting my headers as well. I can choose this range. hit confirm, and then it'll come back and it'll go sheet, and then it'll just dot range. So it kind of auto completes for you. And then you can always custom input from Excel as well. And then you can give it a table, a pivot table, a range, or a sheet using this kind of interface. So there's a whole lot of different ways that you can interact using the app integrations. We're going to stick with sheet 1 for right now. We're just going to read that. Has headers. We want to check this. So if our table has headers, we want to make sure that we have that. And then inside of this, we're going to have a row. So that is our current row. And then let's look at the type of that row. Let's go over to the data manager. We can go into variables. Oh, you can't see it there. Let's pull in an assign here. And then we can look at current row. Dot. So now we have all of these columns underneath of that row. So what it does is it automatically detects what's going on inside of that as we're looping through, and it pulls those columns in as fields, which is really nice. We also have some other fields here, like address. This is going to be like the cell address for that. And then, you know, first cell, full range name. There's a lot of different, we can also pull out the worksheet, right? There's a lot of different things that we can do here. But we're going to just try to print out the current row dot. First, we're going to go with the exchange, right? And you'll see it says current row dot by field dot exchange, so it auto completed that for me. And you know what? We'll keep these in line, and then we will add this little colon here, and then we'll go current row dot price. And so that's how we interact with Excel using the loop, like for each Excel row. So if we're trying to loop through rows, we can do that, right? Is it still open? I do have it still open. All right, so what's really cool is because we have the single Excel process scope, it already detected that Excel was running, and it's telling me, you know, it's best to only have one. We're going to abort the execution in this case and just restart. I had to close my Excel. It had something running already. There we go. And you see here in the audit using the file. And then check our log messages here. So we've got each of those individual ones running here. So it was able to grab the exchange and then the price and give all of those. And then it also works with custom data types. So if I was to go into Excel, go into this table, and then you'll see that all these are like dollar amounts. If I was to format these as a number, it'll work with those. But because the dollar sign's in there, I don't think that would work. But we could format this like liquidity as a number. So it'll work with all of that. Yeah, and so this is how you would read from each row. So that's looping through the rows. If you wanted to read the entire thing itself, just into a data table, we can do that. Read Excel into data table. So we're going to do the same thing, right? We're going to use our single Excel process scope. We're going to use Excel file, give it the workbook path. It's in use again. I need to remember to close that file. So you've always got to close the file before you use the Zap integration because it's going to read from that file. So we're going to use the Excel file. And then let's go into our Excel activities. Explore here. So we could read cells, but we're actually going to want to read a range, right? So let's go to the R's. We've got this read range here. We can again indicate in Excel or just choose the sheet. I'm going to choose the sheet. It has headers, right? And then I'm going to take that and save it to a data table. Remember to keep our variable naming convention DT underscore. So I control K to create a new variable, DT underscore, and then we'll call this one crypto data, right? And then remember from variables and arguments, this is in the scope. When we create that variable, it's going to be in the scope of this do activity, right? The sequence here. So we've got to go to our data manager and make sure that it's outside of that scope. So right now it's in the use Excel file scope. We want to put it out into the read Excel into data table. But this, I try to keep only my Excel activities inside of my process scope. So if I have a single Excel process scope, I keep all of my Excel activities inside there, and I don't really do much else other than my Excel stuff. I'll make that smaller, and then I'll do my output data table as text here. And then give it DT crypto data, right? If we didn't set that scope, if it was still in the use Excel file, right, it wouldn't recognize here because it's not in the scope. So we need to make sure that this DT crypto data is in the scope. Outputting it as text, log message, DT crypto data, log level info. All right, so what this is going to do is it's going to read the range, right? It's going to get the headers. It's only going to read the visible rows, but we can set it to read the non-visible rows as well. There's a whole lot of different properties in there. Right, there's also a read formatting. And then we output that data table as text and log it to the console. Let's go ahead and run that. And what's really cool is every time there is a use activity, like a use Excel file or a use browser, use application, we get this audit message that says it's using that. So that's really nice to make sure that we know that we're using an application or we're using this Excel file. That's just built into Excel. Let's see. What do we get here? That's not right. Sheet 1. That doesn't seem right. Okay. So yeah, we're reading sheet 1. Sheet 1, saving it to crypto data. And then, oh, there we go. Silly me. I need to, so what I did there was I didn't actually output the data table as text into a variable, so you got to remember to create the text variable. It would help if I did that, and then pass that variable. So basically what this output data table as text is doing is taking a data table, this is the data table that we read from Excel, and then outputting that as a text variable or a string variable. And then we're taking that string and logging it. Let's run this again so we can actually see the data table. I make that mistake all the time. There we go. So now you can see we have this log message that has the entire table here. And what you'll notice is this is actually a CSV table. So it outputs it as, here's your headers, comma separated, and then there is a new line for each row. So we can actually go further with this if you wanted to, and we can work with the CSV activities as well. As Andre said, there are separate CSV activities than there are for Excel activities. So now we can read and write CSV. And there's also an export to CSV. And then there's a read text file. So these are your 4 bread and butter of CSV. If you have a CSV file, you can work with it in the Excel app integration, but you can also just read it using these activities, and they are much faster. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like as well. So we could write to CSV. Write to what file? We'll just call it crypto data CSV.csv. How to write? We're going to write it. We're going to include the headers, right? The delimiter, you can set the delimiter as a comma. You can set an encoding, how to write it. I'm going to do this. Run it, and we'll look at our project here. Got to refresh it. And now we have a CSV file as well. When I click this, I haven't actually opened a CSV on my computer before. That's interesting. And now we have the CSV file, and so we can open that in Excel as well. And so that's how you would interact with CSV files. So there's plenty of different CSV activities. CSVs are much simpler than an Excel file. They just have like a comma separated list. But a lot of data is handled in those, and you can pull those into Excel or use the CSV activities. All right. So that's really all I had for a demo. We can get more into the weeds. We have plenty of time, actually, don't we, Diana?
I think we're booked at least through the hour.
Through the hour?
Yeah, but I mean, I think we've covered a lot. The only thing.
I think you
Sorry,
have
go ahead.
90.
What was that, Diana?
It's
No, that's
Tracy, but I
Tracy.
think you guys have just the invite shows another half hour through.
Yeah, it's up to you guys. If you have more, you can go through. Wait, let's go through it and we just record it. And if you want to stop because you've done enough, then that's fine as well.
I could honestly keep going. There's plenty of things in here that we could
It's
use.
great to get this recorded for the students as they're going through this, and that also allow them time at the end of the semester to kind of go back and look through these if they have any questions about this particular area. So if you don't mind, Mason, go for it.
Sure.
So
we're all
the
learning
only other
from it
thing
as
I could
well.
think of is just maybe helping doing a little cheating on the homework. For example, their first exercise that they're going to do, and just to
Oh yeah.
relate to what you're showing in the
Did you
demo,
want to share your screen?
I mean, I wanted to just maybe talk about it and then point at your screen because you already have
Okay,
it nicely
sure.
open. For example, it's going through a data table of a list of employees and their salaries, and the manager wants to give them a 2% raise. And then sort of like, how would you relate that to, an employee is a row, and then in your range thing, that's where you would do the calculation to see like how much of a raise everyone should get. And that's where you would multiply, the number by, increasing it by 2% and then save it back to the Excel sheet. And that would just sort of, I wanted to point at your screen and say that that would happen inside the for each row that you had a little further down, I think.
Yeah, let's go through here.
There you go, that one. So in there, you can actually, manipulate the information that's in the row and then maybe write it back at a later activity.
Yeah, let's show a demo of that. So that's a good thing. I showed a bunch of read. I didn't show any write, and so I think that would help us a lot too. So one of the things that I pointed out in this file is like this $sign, right? Is in the column, so it's not recognizing this as a text cell or a number cell. It's recognizing it as a text cell. So if we want to fix that, we want to resolve that problem, we can actually do that here in Excel with the for each Excel row. So we have our current row.by field, right? And then we can write cells, right? We can choose a range, current row, and this is where it's really cool. We can write to the price. So these save your life over here. So this is why the app integration is so cool, is because you can use this kind of stuff to interact, and it's much faster. So what do we want to write? Well, we want to make sure that we're getting rid of the $sign. And so we'll need a string for that. We need to use the price itself, and then dot toString.
Oh, okay, it's not a string. That's fine.
Yeah, it's not a string. And then dot replace. Yeah, replace will work. There's plenty of different. I was actually thinking to use the slicing ones, but oh, how do you do a character in VB? I've only been doing C# for a while.
Is it not the single?
Oh, it's a string.
Okay.
Okay,
String
it's not. It doesn't
very
take as
good.
character. It takes a string. There we go.
Yeah, or put a C after it.
It's a C. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm used to this function taking characters, not strings. Or no, this one always takes a string. I'm thinking of a different one.
It used
So we're
to-
gonna.
So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We used to have to go put a character reference on it.
Mhm. Yeah, so we're gonna take the string. So we're taking the field, right? This by field, if we hover over it, it returns an I current row by name. So that's an Excel value, as Excel value is the type that it's returning. So it's returning an Excel value. That's not a string. So we need to .toString it. And then when we get the string, we replace our $sign with a blank space. And that just effectively removes the $sign, right? Let's go ahead and do that. So we will loop through each one, and then let's log it after. So we're writing to that cell, and then we're logging the price after. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll notice when it runs, oh, it runs so fast, but you'll see the UiPath executor come up, and then you'll actually see the Excel icon. Let's run it again. You notice down here, see the Excel, how it pops up? So this is actually opening an instance of Excel. And then, there we go. All right, so this first one, because I manually edited it, it's already in there as a price type. But all of these other ones, they're in here as a number type now. You'll notice that up here. This one's in as a currency, but these are all number type. So now we can work with these as numbers instead of their text type that they were before. And so, I don't know, maybe you wanted to go through and sum up all of these prices. So what you could do is you're going to have to create a variable. Let's create a variable up here called total price. We'll call this one a double. And we'll give it a default value of 0 so that it's initialized as 0. And then we will say total price equals. And so now we're using an assign, but we can just go up here and get our field just like we did up here, or we can reference it in line, right? We can say current row dot price, right? And because we replaced the $sign with a space or with a blank in the file, now we just have these, but they're still in there as a string, and they're going to be read out as a string, right? So we want to make sure that they're not just read out as a string. So we want to toString it first, right? And then we want to convert. So we will do double dot parse. And so we have to pass a string into this, so we toString it. and we parse it into a double, right? And this is only half of it. So the total price is the summation of all of these. So we're going to add the total price as well. All right, and then at the very end, let's log another message called total price of all scraped crypto plus total price. And then total price is actually a double, right? So we're going to get this. Can't convert from string to double. So all we have to do here is put a toString. Basically, anywhere you are in the world where you're getting string conversion errors and you want to just insert into a string, just .toString it. It'll probably work. It'll work for all your base types like integer, double, boolean, all of those. If it's a more complex object, the .toString might not work. So just be careful about that. But basically, when you .toString something, it'll turn like that representative data type into a string, so you can work with it.
Yeah, and I mean, this seems super basic, but the why you did the double dot parse on the string is just because it goes back to the basics of variable types, but you can't sum it to sum strings is just to append them to the end of each other, but
Yeah.
to sum doubles actually gets you the mathematical operation of addition.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so if I put a plus after a string variable, that's going to do concatenation in VB, which is just adding the making the string longer, right? It's adding the string to the other string as an array, whereas the plus on the double is actually an addition of two numbers. So we need to make sure that it's a double before we sum it.
So the same plus operator actually does two different things depending on what variable type you have.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, so what's happening here is I'm writing that cell, right? So I wrote to that cell, but I didn't actually save the file before I did this.
No, I think it's because the first cell you have it set as a currency type in your Excel sheet, and it's not doing the replace because the $sign isn't actually part of the value. It's just part of the formatting Excel provides.
Oh, okay. All right, let's set that back. So that's what I get for double clicking in there. Let's set it as a number.
Yeah. That or just get rid of the first row. One or the other.
There we go. All right, so now we have this total summed. And because it's a double, it has this really long trailing one. That's just because of data conversion and the way C# and VB works. But so now we've gone through and we can write to cells. We can also manipulate some data from the cells, so we can pull that data out and then add things. Yeah, I think that gives us a pretty good overview of what all you can do. Of course, with this, there's like so many different things that you can do. So the challenge that Andres gave is, having like a table. I would say for that one, let's go ahead and to walk through some of the steps, just create an Excel file with 10 rows with an employee name and then their current salary, and just give them random salary numbers, whatever you can think of, and then create a UiPath process that goes through, reads that table and loops through and increases each of those salaries by 2%, and then let's write that to another row or another column that is called new salary, so that we can have the old salary right beside the new salary increased by 2%. And so you should be able to do that with all the activities that we demonstrated here. It's going to look very much like this for each Excel row, but your right cell is going to be in a different place, right? And then use your math operations within VB, just like we did here in line. And so that would be a very good example process to get working on.
Yeah, on the Academy, they'll get all of the sample files.
Oh, okay. Did not know that. Well, if you want extra credit from Mason specifically, create the file yourself. Use UiPath to create the file. All right. Yeah, Diana, I think that's about all we had
No, that's
for
great.
this one.
Yeah, Dr. Newfield, do you have any questions?
No, we're good. In fact, I was mentioning to them while that before we started doing this, I wanted to make sure that they were very familiar with Excel, because the project for this particular one, I had noticed that you need to build off of the first practice and reciprocate for the second practice. And that
Okay.
we just need to make sure that they were saving in the right spot so they could go ahead and retrieve it for the second practice for this particular exercise.
Okay. So you feel like you have enough information?
Oh, yes. And in fact, if as long as we're still recording, they'll remember that I'm saying reminder. Look and read. Practice 2 is relying on practice 1.
Okay, great. And that Mason has a little extra exercise for you. Okay. All right, so I think we can end it there for today. And just a reminder, Dr. Newfield, if you need us, we're available. We'll make time for you. So I know there have been a little issues, but we're gonna resolve them all. And anything you need from us, we're happy to help.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Andres and Mason. That was great. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure.
Yep.